Welcome back to episode number 18 of the One More K podcast. Today is another day of an episode. I'm excited to have you guys on board. Welcome to the number one show that covers anything Asian, trail running, and business. This is, of course, made up from my side. Needs to be verified by anyone out there. But I'm excited today to welcome a guest on the show. We have, of course, Ned in Singapore. Hi, Ned.
And I can verify that what Marcus said is true. This is the number one show for trail running and business, so it's verified, Marcus.
Here we go. I'm sure you're not very biased or very good. But more importantly, we have JP Alipio on the show. Good morning, JP, all the way from the
Hi, Marcus,
Philippines.
Ned. Good morning.
Morning, man. How you doing?
As far as I know, this is the only show covering business and trail running. So definitely it's number one.
Exactly. It's all about the context. If there's only one out of one, it's a number one. Yeah. It's good to have you on the show. I saw that Ned didn't get the brief that today is the day for not being shaved, not being shaven. But yeah,
all right, we're both.
I think I today I decided to keep my beard on, and Ned is the one that is keeping it clean. Thank you, Ned.
I'm a clean living individual, man. This is it. This is the clean living look.
I wonder if that's more Singapore, more you. I don't know. Anyway, so JP, we are excited to shed some light today on the Philippines, a country that has been really making its noise in trail running, ultra running, outdoor sports recently, and has some of the best runners in Southeast Asia, not maybe even Asia. And we've seen many events happening. And of course, you are the founder of a very important event or two events of the Philippine race calendar. So we're very pleased to have you here. The first question, kicking it off right now, is the show is called One More K, which means it's all about this mental game you play at the end of the race. Just one more K, just one more K. When was your last one more K moment?
Well, for running, actually, it's been a while. My last one more K moment in a race was last December with my dog. We had a Canicross race, and it was a 5K, and it was very, Canicross race, very fast competition. You're practically sprinting from start to finish. And the last kilometer, I was basically fighting with a good friend and his dog, and we were running full sprint to the finish line. And that last kilometer really, really hurt. It basically we finished, I think, 10 seconds behind each other, and both dropped at the finish line. We couldn't stand when we got to the finish line, both of us. So that was a really fun one more K. Canicross race.
I sometimes tell people I'm more scared of a 5K than a 100K. There is something about a 5K where there's just no hiding. You absolutely have to bury yourself. And you're right. Like some of those Ks inside of 5K can be.
They hurt. Like they hurt from the start to the finish. And actually recently, over the last, let's say 3 years, I've actually been doing a lot more short distance races because I've been enjoying. I used to do a lot. Like I did the Dragon's Back race. I don't know if you know this in Wales, and
wow.
Training for something like that, like 300 kilometers, something. It's a long slog. And a few years back, I decided I want to do some faster races. So I've been doing a lot of 10, 15 kilometer races. Really, the races where you can actually bury yourself from start to finish and empty the tank, essentially.
What's your goal for the 10K? What's the target time you want to get to?
I'm not a very fast, because I never run on the road. I only run on the trail because I run with my dogs all the time. So my probably my fastest 10K is like 40 minutes or something like that.
It's okay.
42 minutes.
It's okay. I mean, look, you're speaking to, I used to be fast, but Marcus was genuinely fast. Marcus is a track dude, so he knows about the pain.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't mean to say that, but you gotta do sub 40. Come on, JP. I mean, that's really what you have to go for here. Yeah. Wonderful. Before we're going to go to the Cordillera Mountain Ultra Marathon, these are the races, of course, you have been creating in Philippines. We want to hear all about it. We have, as usual, our news section, so we make sure that we cover the most important parts in the trail running world. We are digesting the delicious news of trail and ultra running that happened the last 5-6 days. And there, as usual, has lots been happening, and we're going to pick the most important ones. I think I came across a story that kind of fascinated me quite a bit, was another world record attempt by an Indian lady. And because we were highlighting especially female and Asian runners, I thought it's important to make sure we cover as well the lady called Sufiya Sufi, an Indian lady who is attempting to run around the world in 2025. It is a 4,075 kilometer long
40,000.
route.
40,000.
Did I say 14?
40,000 kilometers.
You said 4.
Oh, wow. I say, yeah, it's times 10, 40,000 kilometers. Thank you. Circumnavigating the world. I find that impressive. She's actually well known in India. She already has some other world records under her belt, and she's adding this one to it. She has done mostly stuff in India and in Qatar, but now she's planning this year to do the world tour for 2025.
She is that this lady has done, I had kind of heard of her before. She's done some big stuff, like some really big stuff. But we had the guy from Vikas from India on the show before. At the end of this article, it says, she's quoted as saying, ultra running is a new sport in India, does not have recognition. As a result, she struggles to find sponsors support. She sometimes does crowdfunding. But then, so she needs sponsors. Marcus. She is currently working to find a nutrition sponsor to help her with her runs.
Oh, wow. I do happen to know a nutrition company that might be able to help it out. Although, at the same time, though, she is crossing, I forgot the number, she is crossing 50 countries, if I'm not mistaken. Sorry, 20 countries. So she needs a lot of visas and, sending nutrition to all these countries might be challenging. But I'm sure we can figure it out.
Anyway. How much food do you need to eat for 40,000 kilometers?
I mean, we sponsored recently a duo that was walking from Hanoi to Ho Chi Minh City, which was around 3,000 kilometers. They did it in around 85 days. So every day they basically did a half marathon. And they were both also vegans, which was extra challenging. If you walk into the countryside of Vietnam, you do find a lot of tofu, which is great, and veggies, but most meals have meat inside. So they had a very bland diet throughout, and they were pretty much downing our energy bars five a day because it reminds them of home. They're both British. But yeah, it was definitely a challenge to eat enough food in those countrysides.
Yeah, for sure. I was a vegetarian for a couple of years back, and you don't realize when you eat meat that when you become a vegetarian, you have to eat like 3 or 4 times more because the calories are just so few in and I actually lost so much weight in the beginning because I was eating the same portions. You're training and you need to eat like double, triple the portions, and your plates would be like gigantic.
It's an interesting one. JP, you've done Dragon's Back, and I'm sure as you did that, you tried gels, and halfway through, you're like, oh my God, I'm sick of everything I've tried, right? So that, obviously running around the world's a different thing because she's got to eat real food as she goes. But your point is, when you do 100K or whatever, the calories on Strava say 6,000 or whatever it might be. And you can't really put that in. And we had Sam Harvey on the show, and he says, particularly for backyard, that it's just a, what does he call it? Like it's an eating competition with a bit of running thrown in. I think running around the world, it's at such a lower pace. But you're right. Like, it's going to be interesting to see, because she can't carry the gels the whole way. But anyway, well, good on her for running around the world. She did say that once she's finished running around the world, she said she hasn't even tapped the sides of the ideas that she has of what she wants to do. Wow. So I don't know where she's running next, if she's run around the world, but this lady's got some big ideas.
Wow. It'd be amazing if she can do it.
For sure.
We'll follow her journey, and it's planning time. So next year she will do it. Moving from India up to China, there was an article in the Washington Post, which Ned shared with me. Thank you for sharing that, Ned. Very interesting numbers and trends that came out of the article. Ned, what did you take away from that Washington Post article about China?
I'm going to ask JP. JP, if you haven't seen these numbers, JP, I'm going to ask you, I hope it's not so there, how many people last weekend do you think ran a marathon in China?
Ooh,
Have a guess.
maybe 20,000.
Are you ready for this, JP?
Okay.
500,000 people ran a marathon in China this weekend.
What? 500,000? Well, that's like less than a percentage point of their population, isn't it?
But still, isn't that wild?
It's huge. It's huge. Yeah.
Like we talk about business on the show and the growth of running, and a bit like Marcus said, we're biased. We're all biased. We're all runners. We all want to see it grow. But 500,000 people running a marathon this weekend.
How many events was that? 500,000 runners.
50.
I don't know.
So there were 500,000 runners participating in 50 marathons across China. So we're talking only the marathon distance. So it happened last weekend where 50 marathons. The number in the report also says that only a few years ago, as usual, there were only 2 marathons. Now there are over 700 marathons in China in a year. So that's really a phenomenal growth. I also wanted to point out a few other rather interesting comments and observations in this article where, Ned, did you read this? I wanted to make sure that it's covered. So it was about how the marathons try to be different and how they can sell, the uniqueness. Given there's so many events now, there's a high competition. For example, one of them went through a old mine, and it was like a rock and roll concert at the end of at the finish line. The other one went through the film park, like the Hollywood of China, and you can run through the different sets of filmmaking, and people were hoping to see some celebrities. Another one was at the coastal town. They were serving 80,000 shrimps at the aid stations to to add something unique to it. So
JP, you've
80,000 shrimps. That's very unique.
JP, you've got your work cut out now. JP, you've got to come up with some ideas, man.
I've been to a marathon where there's been concerts on the road, but never with 1,000 shrimps at the end. That's something.
It's quite intense. Yeah, it's definitely a good sign from China that something's happening. People also criticize, or usually it might be money-making machine. But yeah, as with every hype, things come and go. So I think right now it's a hype cycle, and then we will see some consolidation afterwards. But yeah, it's good that people are out and doing exercise.
Well, it just also means that a lot of people now have a lot more disposable income and time. I mean, that comes with more wealth and more time. Essentially, people are more concerned about their health, and the trends also they tend to follow, or the Western trends as well. So marathon, ultramarathon, trail running.
It's good for us.
Good for us. Moving on to a race we covered last weekend. So quickly wrapping up that one, the Cocodona 250. We had a very exciting finish. We covered it last week because also, Ned, one of the participants. What happened to Jeff Browning?
So Jeff Browning, Bronco Billy, one of the greats, 50-year-old dude, only just behind Speed Goat Carl was one of the great kind of 100-mile guys. He was my coach for like 6 months coming into Backyard, so I know him well. He's a good dude. And this race had some real people in it. So there was String Bean, if you know who String Bean is, who's the Appalachian Trail. There was Michael Versteeg. Jeff was leading 250-mile race from about 40 miles out. His breathing, he had some breathing issue. By 20 or 10 miles out, he could only breathe through his nose. With a few miles to go, he basically couldn't really breathe, which obviously is an issue. And with 3 miles to go, he was leading, but he was walking, and a guy just ran past him. The guy just ran past him and won because he was walking. And what are you going to do? Jeff Browning didn't complain. He wasn't moaning and bitching. It was like, that's a 250-mile race, man. Like shit happens. Is how it is. So it was pretty cool.
And being competitive at his age is pretty amazing. Yeah?
He's 53. I'm 57. Like, I love to see these old dudes. Did you see Carl Meltzer won another 100-mile race? That's like his 23rd year in a row that the dude is winning. So I think as we get, these big long races, Jeff Browning, the Cocodona is becoming, Marcus, They had a live stream for the entire time.
Wow.
200.
How long was that? Like
5 days.
30 hours?
5 days.
5 days live stream. Wow.
And
Okay.
the world's changing, man, from 500,000 people in China running to 5-day live streaming on a 250-mile race. We're in a little time period where anything goes, man.
Moving on to Europe, Transvulcania, Adidas Terex, very popular and beautiful race on the island of La Palma. Happened over the weekend, and Jonathan Albon again made it. He came first. Ruth Croft was the first female. Pretty amazing finish. We want to highlight, of course, the third female, Sumaya Buddha, who had an exciting race and came third in this very competitive and beautiful race on La Palma. The story goes that JP also has been at this race before, JP.
Yes.
Tell us about it. How did it go?
It's an amazing race. I loved it. Like the whole experience from start to finish. It's pretty unique. It's the Spanish, the culture there and the whole island. It's one whole fiesta. You start at 6 a.m. in the dark. And amazingly, like at 6 a.m, the trails are lined with people just cheering you on, and there's people drinking. Like the whole island, in the middle of nowhere, you'll see people with guitars playing music in the middle of the mountains. There's old ladies who will offer you wine as you go through the vineyards. The scenery is amazing because you start from the sea on one side of the island, climb up to almost 3,000 meters, cross these volcanoes, this volcanic landscape, which it's amazing. You cross the clouds and then you come down on the other side of the island from basically the highest point down to the sea, like a 20-kilometer super rough downhill run from like I forgot how high it was, but something like 2.9 or something like that, and down to zero. This whole downhill section, it's full of people. It's like it's so full of people from the top to the bottom. It's amazing. People are just cheering you on, and it just gives you this boost. This boost of, you're tired. You've been running for 50 kilometers by that point, and the last 20 kilometers is just packed with people. Then the last 1-2 kilometers, it's this straight through the main street, and it's full of people drinking and people just celebrating. These aren't even the runners; these are just the locals from La Palma, and everybody's just cheering you on. Whether you're the first runner, I came in like 400 or something. There's 10,000 runners that joined that race, and I came in 400, and it felt like they were cheering on the first person to arrive at the finish line. It was an amazing experience. It's probably the first race I've ever done where I got to the finish line and I said, I want to do this again because it was so much fun. Yeah.
Well, 400th. That's no joke, JP, because that's a good job, man. That is solid, and it is famous for that downhill at the end. And I was watching a little bit of the live stream. Like these people, John Albon, obviously, but Sunmaya. I mean, I don't know if you've seen any of the reels of Sunmaya running downhill. This lady can fly downhill. I mean, they're all doing it. Ruth Croft, John Albon, all of them coming down that on tired legs. Crazy! Yeah. It was amazing to see.
I remember that because it took me record time. It took me like sub 8 hours to do the first 50K, and it took me 6 hours to go down. I didn't realize how destroyed my legs would be from that, and it's a really rough. My shoes were pretty wrecked by the end of the race because the rocks are pretty sharp, and they really shred the shoes.
Yeah,
but it's amazing to see an Asian actually stay on the top step. No, third place at that race. It's probably one of the most competitive races on earth. You have the best runners go there, and it's always very fast. Like for the sharp end of the race, it's always very fast for them.
It is. It looks super fast. Sunmaya was closing. Like she's going to win. She's going to win. I mean, obviously you've got a lot of talented, Filipino athletes coming through as well. But I think from the Asian athletes, I think it really is Sunmaya who is she was like 15, 20 minutes behind Ruth Croft. And
Yeah.
I don't know if when you watch her, man, she has a determined look on her face. She is not messing around, this lady. Like, it is full gas. Like that race she did in China recently when her and the top Chinese,
I saw that one. That was amazing.
they were killing each other. I mean, they were not, this idea, sometimes it's this idea, oh, let's run in and hold hands and win together. You're like, admiring that lady, but not holding hands and running in together. That was going to be an absolute blood sport to the end.
Yeah.
And
It's so different now, the ultra marathons, where it used to be they would have like 30 minutes between each other, and now it's like minutes, like a few minutes, even seconds for some. 10 years back, the distances between competitors would be 30 minutes to an hour. Now a lot of the competition is really, really close. Even here in the Philippines, the competition is pretty close for the competitive events, the ones where all of the top runners come, and it's probably like 1 minute, 2 minutes between the top 10.
Good
Good to see.
keyword, Philippines. Let's switch gears and move over to this country with 16,000 islands. I don't know if that's correct. What's the latest number?
60. Shucks, I don't know actually.
Okay, whatever.
Seven-
A lot of islands.
Something.
And a lot of
It's a lot.
people.
It's a lot of islands.
Yeah, a lot of
Thousands
islands.
of islands. Yeah.
Tell us more about the story of Cordillera.
Well, the Cordillera Mountain Ultra is actually our second event. We have the Cordillera Challenge, which we've been doing for 15 years now. It's a mountain bike race, which we're doing this June. And the Cordillera Mountain Ultra, we started it in 2015. And it's now, I guess, almost 10 years since we started that race. It's a 50-kilometer race that goes around Mount Ugo. And we have like a good, it's not a very big race in terms of number of people, but then we have a lot of people come back every year. It's one of those few races where people like coming back, and you see the same faces every year. It's very like a tight knit community. We do the race in this small village in the middle of the mountains, so the capacity of the village actually dictates how many people we can allow to join the race, because the village is tiny. And most of the people who join the race, as part of our sort of social program, we teach the villagers how to create homestays out of their homes. So we taught them how to cook. We taught them how to do the accounting and fix their homes to receive guests and make money from adventure tourism, essentially. And during the race, I would say 70 to 80% of the runners stay in the villagers' home. So it's a really nice sort of cultural experience. You stay with the villagers. It's in literally their rooms where they sleep every night, and you eat the food that they prepare and all of that. So it's a really nice race, and it's a very, very scenic race because it goes around this if you've ever been to the Cordillera, our mountains here are similar to what you would find maybe in Europe. It's pine forests, and it's not so much Asian in that sense. It's more pine forest. Only thing is we have rice terraces in the middle of the pine forest up here, and the indigenous cultures are also very unique where we live, and there's a large variety of terrain here. We have rivers, waterfalls, pine forest ridges, and it goes all the way up to 2,900 meters in some parts of the mountains. Our race goes up to 2,200 meters and then back down to 500 meters. So it's a big climb.
And you started it so did you start the mountain bike race 15 years ago? Was that your race?
Yes, we started a mountain bike race 15 years ago, yeah.
Wow, you've been an OG race director for a long time, man.
I didn't realize that till this year, that it's been a long time. I always think, especially with the pandemic, sort of you feel that you don't really know that gap. But yeah, it's been a while that we've been doing the events, the mountain bike race and the ultra marathon. So yeah, I didn't realize that they were sort of classic races at this point. When I still think that we're sort of new and not anymore, I guess.
How is it going as a business? Like how for the last 15 years, plus, of course, then you have the
As a
ultra marathon.
business, like for adventure events in the Philippines, there's ups and downs. Obviously, the mountain bike, for instance, we've we probably sort of crested the hill maybe 10 years ago. Actually, that was the most number of people who joined the race. We had almost 1,000 people join the race back then, and I think a lot of mountain biking is sort of a difficult sport to get into for many reasons. You know, terrain, where you can practice, equipment as well, and we saw that, like, for the mountain biking side, the people who were joining 10 years ago are still the people who are joining now. There was a very few new mountain bikers getting into the sport. Although, of course, the pandemic now sort of boosted that. We got a lot of cyclists get into the sport. We got a lot more. We're seeing that pick up again. In terms of trail running, it's also, of course, up and down. The Philippines is not China. We don't get 50,000 run, 500,000 runners every weekend. And also, I guess the economic situation is a little different from China. Although the Philippines has been getting wealthier over since we started doing our races 15 years ago. The Philippines is much wealthier. Actually, one of our problems is that a lot of our old routes for our mountain bike race are gone. They're now paved roads, so we've had to change our courses quite a bit, and and with the wealth income increasing, of course, there's also that increase in wanting to do sort of more leisure activities, which includes trail running, which includes mountain biking. We Previously, we were in, I think, 2018. We were probably one of the biggest races in the country, which big here means like 1,000 people, and it's not really in comparison to a lot of other Southeast Asian countries like Thailand or Vietnam. David's race, for instance, in Vietnam gets 5,000 people. It's a lot more runners. But then we in 2018 we had about 800 participants and almost 40 nationalities. That's one of the things we sort of pride ourselves in terms of the business side of the race, is that we actually had people fly in all the way from Europe to this tiny race in a tiny village in the middle of nowhere. It's not an easy race to get to begin with. You have to fly to Manila or fly to Clark and then take a 3 hour bus ride to Baguio and then another hour to get to our tiny village. So just having people from all over the world, from Australia, New Zealand, the United States, fly in just for our 50-kilometer race, that's quite an achievement for us.
What's the competition from within Philippines, and of course competition from outside Philippines? How do you see the landscape changing in terms of
Well,
races?
within the Philippines, actually, there's a lot of races. But a lot of the races actually focus, like in many other parts of Southeast Asia. A lot of races focus on the ultra distance, and and that's because of UTMB maybe, and the growth in that area. But generally, we've actually resisted that urge to put in more kilometers. Every year someone asks me, when are you going to make 100K? I said, no, we're not doing 100K. This Our race is a 50K. It's perfect the way it is. And we here, so there's a lot of races in the 100K, 80K. There's many, almost every weekend. I think there's probably some race somewhere in the Philippines. I would say, I'm not sure, in the 50K category. I don't think we actually have that much in terms of competition. The biggest competition for us, I would say, is the Spartan race, because they are sort of growing quite aggressively, and they also went into trail running, and they get Spartan race, for some reason, gets more new trail runners than most other trail races in the Philippines. I guess the corporate nature and sort of the gym, it gets a gym crowd. The people who like to strip naked and show their abs. And one of the places that's actually quite growing much more rapidly now is Mindanao, the southern island of the Philippines. So they came into trail running a little later than we did here in Luzon. So they have a lot of new runners, and that's something that's like a growth area for trail running in the Philippines. I think there's a race this weekend that has almost or like next month, which has almost 1,000 runners. But these are with lower distances, usually 5K, 25K, something like that. And that's really the growth. We don't see that many runners in Luzon. One of the things that's happened over the pandemic is a lot of the runners were about my age. They were in their 40s already, and they they were active runners before the pandemic. But then you don't realize that 4 years passed and people aged out of the sport or changed sports altogether. You know, they went into cycling or they went into whatever other sport that they, including Spartan, they went into Spartan. You know, so um, a lot of the trail runners actually moved on in this part of the Philippines. So we're trying to get more of the younger runners. The road running is big now. Again, like everywhere in Asia, road running is growing, but the transition from road running to trail running isn't often as clear. You know, you don't really get that transition so quickly
Yeah,
from road to trail.
but at least look, it's there's so much interesting there. Like I first went to the Philippines like in 1991, like 30 something years ago, 30, and I wasn't really running there. You'd see nobody running. Your point that across all of Asia, the growth in wealth has meant that people have free time. If you don't have wealth and don't have free time, you're not running. I mean, it's just basic facts, right? If you're struggling to make your life, and the Philippines, like Vietnam, like many countries, has grown unbelievably, and also has become, like you mentioned, Mindanao. Obviously, 30 years ago, 20 years ago, you weren't running there because that had challenges,
Yeah,
politically, politically, there was,
yeah,
trouble,
safety
safety.
and
Yeah,
everything.
like
Yeah.
there was, but it's amazing to see. So maybe a question is this, is that, is it good overall? I.e., you say, the ab dudes and dudesses want to go to Spartan to show off their. I'm pretending to show my abs. I don't have any, so I can't do it. But is the growth of all endurance sport, is it good overall, JP? So you're saying some people age out, things change, but is the basic philosophy that endurance, whether it's Spartan, Hydrox, gym, road, trail, is that growing overall due to all of these reasons?
I think so. I think so. You'll see it now with, especially with triathlon, is probably the fastest growing endurance sport here. You see massive numbers join the triathlon races in the Philippines, especially since it's, the Ironman group is obviously with the UTMB. The Ironman group is also so big with their promotions, and even though it's expensive, like to join a Ironman race is something like 400 US
Oh,
dollars, I
more,
think,
more, more,
or
JP.
$500.
More.
Yeah.
I did Ironman 10 years ago, dude. It was like 700. It might be less in the
Yeah,
Philippines.
right.
It's
See, there
expensive.
you go. 10 years ago, it's expensive, but still, it's become. I guess it's the same in any other Asian country or any country for that matter. That Ironman has become aspirational. It's like an aspirational thing. You save up so that you can join this expensive sport that all these other celebrities and wealthy people join. We don't seem to have that so much in trail running. You don't have that sort of aspirational. Oh, I'm gonna join the X trail run because I'm seeing all my idols, the celebrities going. It still has this very much dirt bag culture about it, which doesn't have that sort of glitz and glam of Iron Man or let's say the World Marathon Majors, which has that sort of glamour around it. We don't have that as much, or actually we probably don't have it at all in trail running because people people come to it in a very dirt bag kind of way, and that's been the culture. It's changing also, like when we started the trail runs, we used to have more hikers who would become trail runners. The people who would go outdoors, they would become the trail runners. But then maybe for right before the pandemic, most of the trail runners were road runners or marathoners who would transition to trail, and that was where the growth area was. But I think now, I don't know, there's so many pathways to get there There's so many pathways to get to where, to trail running or to mountain biking, to the outdoors essentially. But one of the things that's actually holding us back is actually the places to play. You need places to play. I mean, the growth of trail running in Europe is because of access. You have so much access to all of the outdoor space. It's so easy. You don't have to pay for anything. You get out your door, take a train, or you just actually go out the door. You go into the mountains. If you're in Europe, it's so easy. It's here in most of Asia, you have to travel quite far to get to the trails. When you get there, you need to pay certain fees, and so there's a lot of barriers to entry in terms of growing the outdoor sports world, and and that's not so different from any part of Southeast Asia actually. Because if you go to Thailand, you go to Vietnam, you go to all the national parks, you need to travel from, let's say, Bangkok to wherever, or in Singapore you have to fly somewhere to actually do a trail run, right? So it's the access to the outdoors is one of the biggest things I would think that's that's stopping trail running from actually booming in the same way it's been booming in Europe.
One of the things the Philippines seems to have uniquely, though, is that there seems to be a Philippine trail running national team.
Yes, yes. The Philippines is, I think, the only country that has that at the moment, like a really organized Philippine Trail Running Association. It's not without its politics. Obviously, there is some politics there, like any other place. But then it's very organized. They actually train here in Baguio because it's higher elevation. We have the mountains and the trails around here. So the national team is here now. They're training for the Southeast Asian Trail Running Cup, which is happening in June in Bontoc, which is north of here.
How does it work? So, does the government give funding to pay salaries, or what's the structure of this team?
No, right now actually it's run by this group of sort of, I would guess, more senior trail runners, and they've been raising funds. It's mostly privately funded stuff, and they've been raising funds. But the athletes, they I don't know if they get a salary, but they all their training is paid for. Their travel is paid for. Their food, nutrition, everything. Their equipment is also sponsored. So at the very least, they have no cost in terms of joining any of the events here or abroad, as long as they're part of the team. And that's basically the. I don't think any other country in Southeast Asia
No,
has
no one
that
else
at the
has it
moment.
right
Yeah.
now. No, it's really unique in the Philippines, and I was surprised to see it happening. And it's good. I think it's good, and we always talk about in the podcast where countries are leading something, and I think Philippines is leading in having, at least to the outside, a national team which organizes camps and at least the traveling, which traveling can be very expensive if you want to go
Yeah, yeah.
international.
I was talking to the officers of the association a few months back, and they were saying that when they went to Europe for the mountain running championships in Austria, they were the only team there that where the athletes didn't have to pay their own way to get to the race. Essentially, even the European athletes had to pay for their own way, pay for their own accommodations to get there. But the Philippine team, basically, they were there, sponsored by private individuals and a few companies, but as a whole team.
Athletes, there are some really cool names coming out of the Philippines, and I think many of us know Mr. Stingray, who is
Of
really
course,
crushing it.
Stingray is like a Southeast Asian phenomena.
Yeah, but talk us through the heroes that we should all follow from the Philippines, male and female,
Yeah,
hopefully.
Stingray actually got his start also with our race. Like in 2016 or 17 was the first time he won our he came in second place against Harry Jones. Harry Jones came to our race, and then Stingray came in second place, but he got his start also with us. And here in the Philippines, we have Arnie Macaneras. He's a native of Davao. He's a guide, mountain guide for Mount Apo, which is the highest mountain in the Philippines. So he's probably the second best runner in terms of the long distance racing, aside from Stingray. And then there's a few others. Romnick Tongkaling for the shorter distance races. For For the women, there's Trisha Reyes also for the long distance. A lot for the women, it's more actually in the long distance for some reason. That where they excel. The men, there's both the long and the short distance in terms of trail running. But the focus of the Philippine Trail Running Association is mostly not in the really ultra distance, not in the 100K or 100 mile, because that's not the competitive distances for trail running in terms of the professional side of the sport, the Mountain Running Association, and it's more in the 70 and 30, 25 to 30K where they're trying to focus on right now.
Why is that? Do you think that's because of prize money, or like, why do they focus on the shorter distance?
Well, the competitions are, how do you call it, the sort of athletic federations. Those are the sort of the sanctioned trail running races are in that distance, not in the 100 mile or 100K distance. So if you look at the World Mountain Running Championships, the distances are 70, I think, for the long, or 80 for the long, and I think 30K for the short distance race. So that's I think that's the way things are going, because they want to make it into maybe an Olympic sport in the future. And you can't really have an Olympic sport that's 100 mile. So
We covered it in the last episode. Marcus had found or last couple of episodes. There are people trying to bring ultra trail. Look, JP, as we know, what is ultra and trail? Is it 50K? Is it VK? Is it 100 miles? Is it backyard? Is it? There's so many different forms of it. But I think, like, the Philippines having a team, this is how things start, right? Like, in 30 years' time, when every country has a national trail running team and it's golds in the Olympics, people will be like, how did all this start? It does just take a few committed people to be like, let's do this. Like it makes sense. And I don't want to bash on, we bash UTMB quite a bit. We like them and also bash them. We do both, right? Because we've had them on the show and they've been kind and they're trying. They're definitely trying. But prize money. Sunmaya won €1,500. That's it, right? She got third. Sunmaya won €1,500.
That's so small. If she races in China every weekend, she'd make 10 times.
and the point is, like, it doesn't even cover the airfare, right? Like, so when you said the Philippine team is getting paid to go there, I mean, that's massive. It's still small money. We're not making football money or basketball money or stupid tennis money, but we've got to start somewhere. And it's amazing. What was it? Was it just a few people thought, let's do this, and they agitated for it? How did it? Because that's what
essentially, actually, it was the idea started probably many years back. I was even part of the first group that was playing around with the idea of making an organization. But then back then there was some politics, so that never happened. And then during the pandemic, there was an opportunity for them to do it, and they did it. And it's still up and running now. It's a group of very committed people. They're actually very good at getting sponsorships. They're very good at organizing things. I mean, kudos to them. They've spent a lot of their own money putting it together. It's not cheap, sending 20 athletes or even just training 20 athletes for 4 months, 6 months of the year and supporting them. It's not cheap, and a lot of what the Philippine Trail Running Association has been able to do has been because of the individuals that are part of it, really, because they've gone above and beyond what was needed, and really took money out of their own pockets just to keep this going. And with the Southeast Asian Trail Running Cup, which is happening next month, I think that's going to push a lot of the Southeast Asian countries to make their own teams. They make their own teams and sort of copy the Philippine model, I guess, of having an organized and in most, actually, the Philippines, in most other countries, the trail running is much, much bigger than the Philippines, in comparison to the numbers. Like, Vietnam, David's races get 5,000. Thailand races, you could have 2 or 3 races every weekend, and each race would have more than 1,000 runners. The Philippines, in comparison, our biggest races are 1,000. So you can't have 2 big races on one weekend because you'll eat each other up. I think, despite that, the Philippines has been leading the way in terms of having a team and organizing and all of this.
Do we think Stingray is close to top 10 in a major race?
I think Stingray is close to like the top 10 in the 50K.
Yeah.
If he did a 50K race, he would be maybe in the top five actually. The thing with Stingray is, especially when he was still with the North Face Adventure team, they kept putting him in races where he wasn't really suited for. Like he would do like 100K or 100 mile. He'd do super well up to 80K, and
Yeah,
then
and
blow
then
up,
yeah,
and then he can't really, because he's used to pushing a certain pace, I guess, and he knows his strength in doing that. But then he's still young, so he's still young and cocky, and he wants to, like, the what was it? I was watching the World Mountain Running Championships, and he was first for 20 kilometers. So it's like, what the hell is he doing? It's like
let's
first for 20
go.
kilometers, and the first 20K was something like only 1,000 meters of gain, and then there's 3,000 or 5,000 meters of gain after that. So obviously, the next 5,000 he started losing positions. So, but definitely in the 50K, he can, like, if he joined the OCC or something like that, the UTMB race, which is I think 40 plus K, he would do really well. Probably even in the top three, quite possibly, if he focused on it. The one thing though for Asian athletes is, because like for Stingray, even though all his costs are covered, like his expenses are covered, I don't think, I'm not sure if he gets a salary. So a lot of what he earns is from the prize money from the different races. So you're, when you're that kind of professional, you're forced to race all the time. You're not able to really focus on a specific race. Let's say this is your A race, you're going to the UTMB. You're not going to be racing X months before that, just training for the race. But then if racing is your job, then you're going to have to race all the time.
Good. Last question from my side. When do you think we're going to see a Philippine runner winning UTMB?
Oh, it's a good question. Um, Maybe in 10 years, I would say it's possible in 10 years.
And then
With
the second
the
question, follow up, is when do you think an Asian runner will win UTMB?
Oh, that would be soon. That would be soon. I would think. I would think probably one of the Chinese runners can, if they're able to really focus and someone put some money behind them. Like, when I was talking to Kilian, it's a very different situation. With Kilian, he's European. He basically he has money to not race all the time. He can feed himself well and do all the training, have a coach, or coach himself. He has access to information. Asian runners don't generally have that, right? And if someone put some money behind a couple of their best Asian runners, give them everything that a European runner would have, then definitely they would be able to win the UTMB.
Wow, we are excited about that. I think thanks to you guys, what you have been doing in the Philippines for now 15 years. I mean, 15 years ago, I didn't even think about trail running, to be honest with you. I was still on my track and road stuff. And look at you already doing amazing things in the Philippines for 15 years. I mean, I think kudos for being an OG and for having been early. But also, I wanted to kind of say and step back a bit. It's so cool that across different countries and continents, we can sit here and discuss all these things online. Like whether it's Transvulcania, whether it's UTMB, whether it's Philippines, I think this world is moving together, and I really enjoy this kind of connection globally. Yeah.
And it wasn't even a conversation. I mean, again, JP, 10 years ago, you were one of the only trail race directors. You're right. David Lloyd selling out Vietnam Mountain Marathon, Eugene selling out Malaysia. But there wasn't podcast. There was nobody. Like, this conversation wasn't, we weren't talking about Stingray or St. Meyer or any of these races today. Like the fact that even on I Run Far and the European, the fact that you got Killian on your show, like, it's so good to see that conversation. And you're right. Like, different countries moving at different speed. Vietnam, obviously a lot happening there. Philippines, but it's good to see, man. Like, it's one day Asia will people will be like not just flying for one race to Philippines. They'll be doing a whole circuit out here.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, one of the things really is just in Southeast Asia, it's so easy to travel now. You can go, you can hop on a plane in Singapore, be in the Philippines in an hour, or Vietnam or Thailand or wherever. Actually, it's so convenient for many people to travel. So a lot of people just travel around, like Eugene's race or David's race. It's it's basically the neighborhood
Yeah, the backyard,
backyard. Yeah.
which is one of Ned's favorite words. Well, JP, we're wishing you all the best. Big shout out to your races. That one coming up, one is coming November. You also have a podcast. Everyone, please dial into the podcast. It's a great. The name of the podcast. You want to give it a quick shout out?
Yes, it's the Wildcast podcast. So you can find it on most of the streaming, like Apple and Spotify.
Wonderful. The last part of the podcast, of the One More K podcast, is Ned's drop of inspiration and wisdom, how I always kind of coin it. You're more than welcome to stay, JP, please, and listen to
Yeah, of course.
Ned's poetry that he puts together every week for each show. And for that, Ned, as usual, I'm handing over to you.
I sometimes wonder, because you call it inspiration and wisdom, and I really don't have a lot of that, so I just write whatever comes out my head. So you can. This one's a bit of a shorter one. I'll be honest, partly because I wrote it a bit late, and partly took me a while to figure out what to write. But it won't surprise you what I'm writing about. This one's called "That's a Lot of People." That's a lot of people. 1 million people want to do the London Marathon next year. 500,000 people ran a marathon this weekend in China. I love it. Running wasn't a thing a while ago. When I was young, it was a weird thing. It used to be called jogging. No one liked that. No one wants to be called a jogger. But it's okay. Now we're all runners. I haven't heard the word jogging for ages. And I have to say, it's so good that if you're running or jogging, that everyone is getting it. Because runners are better people, better humans, aren't we? We're better for running, physically, mentally. And it made me think, what if we all ran? All 8 billion of us. Would the world be a better place? It has to be. So how many people in total ran this weekend in the whole world? I don't know. Is it 500 million? Is it a billion? Is it more? I don't know. But it's a lot of people. I see it. And of course, there's growing pains. It's not all perfect. But the more, the better, for sure. So, would the Earth actually move if we all ran? 8 billion of us stood up today and did it. So let's try. All of us go for a run today. And once the whole world runs, we will never stop and the world will be a better place. Let's go, get out there, and I'll see you on the trails. Ned.
Thank you, Ned.
Thank you, Ned.
I'm wondering if we should
That was
get a
wonderful.
calculation in place to see if the world's spinning would change if everyone starts running at the same time.
What if we, it just made me think, what if we all ran in the opposite direction from the world spinning? Would we slow the rotation down if we all coordinated one mass 8 billion person charge in the opposite direction?
If anyone in the audience can solve this issue with us, please contact us. We would love to do some calculations. I'm an engineer myself, but I have not done this kind of physics before. In any case, thank you so much. Anyone out there, please
Thank you,
subscribe
yeah.
to our channel. Please follow us on Instagram. Go to the Philippines, a great country. The trails are pretty amazing. Runners are very strong. JP is a great guy to follow as well. We will give a shout out on our newsletter as well. And until then, see you out there.
See you next week, guys.
See you guys.
Thanks, JP.
Thank you. Yep.